if you can do things at a high level in a short amount of time, you're going to make more money than the next guy down the street.
That's a really good way to put it. I'm really, my service company listeners, I'm sure their ears just perked up, right? Because, at the end of the day, we sell time, but we also control it. But what is cash flow and why is it so important?
Cash flow is speed.
Yes.
It's the speed of cash moving from the client's account to my account.
Yeah.
I'm an expert in strategy. It takes a lot because strategy stems from critical thinking, and not everybody can think critically about different situations. And so when I look at numbers or I see your business and see your organization, I'm thinking of what are the different strategies that we could implement within your organization to propel you forward. And the numbers help me to decipher that. But ultimately, learning about you, your business, your vision, and what do you do, and how you're currently positioned helps me to understand what strategies we need to implement to move you in a better position.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Blue is the New White podcast. I have an awesome guest today. At least I think he's awesome. I haven't had a chance to really talk to him yet, maybe for a couple minutes, but he seems pretty cool, and I've been excited about talking to him since I learned that he was going to be coming on the show. So without further ado, Tim Wingate, man, welcome to the Blue is the New White podcast, my friend.
Thank you, man. Appreciate you for having me, Josh.
Yeah.
Love to be here, man. Loving to be here.
All right. We're going to get into some really cool shit today, and I'm really excited. Hopefully a lot to learn for my audience. I know that you're certainly an expert in your field. We'll get to that in a second. But before we do, if you just kind of want a high level, introduce yourself. Who are you? What do you do? Why are you here?
Oh, man. I'm just a simple guy, right? Family man, a husband to my wife of 14 years. Definitely have my 3 children, Tim, Isaiah, and David. So, family man first. But as far as my profession goes, I'm a construction accountant. Been at this for like 8 years, and really just love the construction industry because my dad, he is a contractor. And I'm still working out there in the field, and I still assist him and help him when he, chooses to listen to me. But
you're still his boy, though, right? So he's like,
yeah, I'm still his boy.
Are
man.
you sure? Are you sure?
So that's me. That's
All
me in
right.
a nutshell.
Right on, man. Very cool. Very cool. I'm excited to kind of unpack some of that and get into it. So my audience understands, kind of what we're going to get into and why you're here on the show. Just tell me in the best way that you can, what do you feel like you're an expert in, Tim?
Yeah. So I think short and sweet, I'm an expert in strategy. It takes a lot because strategy stems from critical thinking, and not everybody can think critically about different situations. And so when I look at numbers or I see your business and see your organization, I'm thinking of what are the different strategies that we could implement within your organization to propel you forward. And the numbers help me to decipher that. But ultimately, learning about you, your business, your vision, and what do you do, and how you're currently positioned helps me to understand what strategies we need to implement to move you in a better position. And so that's my sweet spot.
That's awesome. So obviously, you said you're a construction accountant. When you say strategy and you just describe the things that you did, I'm thinking growth strategy, right? I'm thinking all of that. So are you saying that you like to get to know the business as a whole, from sales to operation to finance, the whole thing, in order to really get your arms around what strategy means for that business?
Yeah, I think that's the true role of an accountant. An accountant should not just be looking at numbers. They should be considering the whole picture. And we got to get the whole picture from the owner of the company, who sets the vision for the company, to help them make decisions. And so that is my role. My role is to come in and help guide you. And so that's kind of how I see it.
That's cool. So when when you say that you guide, your role is to guide you, right? Guide business owners. And you mentioned the business owner's vision. Are you helping them come up with the vision? Are you refining the vision? Or are you just taking their vision and implementing a strategy to execute on that?
Yeah, I'm taking their vision because, you know, they woke up with a totally different purpose of how to start their business than than what I use to start my business.
Yeah.
And so I can give them some reasons why I started my business and give them an example of what my vision is, which I do share with all my clients. But ultimately, they need to have their own vision, and then I'm just going to take that information and say, okay, so these are some strategies that we need to put in place to make sure we can see that vision come to life.
Oh, okay. So what is your vision?
Oh, my vision is to help construction owners win year to year by 15% at least. So I want to see their revenue increase by 15% every year. And then I want to see them get organized and become profitable, and where we're now saving money for the construction industry, because most of them, they're not saving any kind of money for any future endeavors or things that they want to invest in the future. They're kind of living job to job, paycheck to paycheck. It doesn't matter if they're a $250,000 business or a $10 million construction company. I still see the same thing where they're not saving money.
Why do you think that is?
Well, because they're not focused on profitability. They're just focused on getting the next job, and I think when you starting off the company, that is the focus. It's like, I need to have as many jobs in the pipeline as possible because I need to feed my family. I need to make sure that, I could put gas in my car. So you're not really so focused on profitability. The other thing too is they don't teach you that in school. When you go get your license, construction license, they're not teaching you how to be profitable. They're just teaching you how the basics, the basis of what revenue is. They give you a small little book on accounting, so you can take a test and pass it and then forget about it, for the rest of your life, right?
Yeah.
But you need to have someone in your ear who can help you think through things strategically from a financial perspective, if that's not your strength.
Yeah, I'm a big proponent of that. I think I just put out some posts just a couple of weeks ago, maybe even last week. I don't remember, but of the importance of just either knowing the numbers, right, or having a partner or having a partner. Like, so one of my non-negotiables is having an accountant, right, or a CPA, somebody who can help you from a tax standpoint, from a report standpoint. Understand and manipulate P&Ls and balance sheets and because that's not the strength of most business owners. Most business owners are, like you said, right? They're in the weeds. I mean, their intent when they started the business was get as many jobs as possible. They're not worried about the profitability over here. Mm-hmm. Right? We'll fix that later. But so I'm curious because I know a little bit about the construction industry. Obviously I'm in the service space, so it's a little bit different, but I've heard that by and large, like true contracting construction firms operate on very thin margins. Mm-hmm. So I'm curious from your perspective, kind of what you've seen out there as the average for construction companies in general for a profit margin.
I would say that, it's definitely different based on who you're serving, whether it's a residential client or commercial client. So in residential, you have an opportunity to have larger margins. In commercial world, you're going to have smaller margins, especially when you're dealing with municipalities. But you usually have more revenue. So when we're thinking about, commercial, you'll see a lot of them, they're shooting for, at least 5%, right? Because
that's what I've heard.
That's the number that they're shooting at, and that's pretty good when you think about all the things that they want to do for their company and for their employees. I would say that definitely on the residential side, it varies based on trade.
I'm sure.
Remodelers, there'll be somewhere between 10 and 25%. 25 is if they really have a great reputation in the community, or they have a great product that people just want to use them. Like, it doesn't matter what the cost is. And then you have guys who are just doing bathroom remodels or kitchen remodels. That's going to be a little bit lower margin. But you will see some of the trades like plumbers, electricians, tile installers. Those guys can have a little bit higher margins because a lot of times they have the labor force. So they have good guys who are quick, fast, skilled. They can actually do things in a short period of time, and time is the thing that kind of makes you more money. If you can do things at a high level in a short amount of time, you're going to make more money than the next guy down the street.
That's a really good way to put it. I'm really, my service company listeners, I'm sure their ears just perked up, right? Because, at the end of the day, we sell time, but we also control it, right? Mm-hmm. And that's, I have this conversation with my team a lot. It's like, okay, if we're going to bid 5 hours on a job, right? And we're going to bid, hey, it's going to take approximately 5 hours on a job.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's say we charge $100 an hour just for round numbers sake, it's going to be $500 bucks.
Yep.
If we send our inexperienced guy, it may take 5 hours, maybe even 6, maybe even 7, right? We're not going to budge on the quote. If they go over it, that kind of is what it is. Same thing on the opposite direction though, right? If we send our most experienced guy, which maybe we pay a little bit more for, but he gets done in an hour and a half.
Yeah.
That's a big difference. That's controlling the time to inflate the profit, right? Yeah. Is that the right
Absolutely.
word? I think it's the right word.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, that's great. Sorry, man. I love numbers. They're not my forte. So if I use the wrong terminology at any point, just number one, expect it. Number two, feel free to correct me.
No, you're good. I think everybody understood it for sure.
No, that's great. So let's kind of talk a little bit about what's the difference between going to a construction accountant like you, right, who specializes in something like this, as opposed to, a general CPA or public accountant or something like that. Because I'm sure that that's very common in these industries. People, find an accountant and maybe not specialized in the field, but obviously you found a niche, you've carved a niche out here for you. So what's the difference?
I think the big difference is just the familiarity. I don't know if I'm saying that right, but with the industry, with the numbers, the language, the process, the procedures, because that's all we're doing. We're reading about it. We're learning about it constantly, only on one industry, versus if you're working with a general accounting firm, he may be working with a contractor, someone who, has an online business, someone who's a realtor, who's a doctor, who's a lawyer. There's his brain power is being divided in all these different specialized areas. And so he could be the best accountant, like graduated from Harvard with an accounting degree, all these different things. But because his mind is being split in 5 or 6 different industries or directions, it's very hard for that person to really be a high-level executor in one industry. And that's what I've learned, that I can be the smartest person, or close to it in the construction industry or from an accounting perspective, because that's all I do. I'm putting in the hours, day in and day out, only on construction clients, versus someone who's putting in the hours and manpower on 5 different, specialties.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
That's what truly makes the difference.
That makes sense. I mean, you're talking about compliances, you're talking about different tax strategies, you're talking about, different ways of paying, right? I mean, there's, like I tell people all the time, like retail is so much different than, commercial construction or commercial service, right? Yeah. I mean, some people I talk to have never heard of net terms. They don't know what net terms are, It's like, what a world that'd be friggin' awesome, but and what that does, what that impacts as far as from a cash flow, standpoint. I try to explain when I'm trying to explain this, I'm trying to give like an example okay, listen, I service a lot of restaurants. Okay, so my
Okay.
business does a lot of restaurants. So I try to say, okay, listen, imagine somebody comes into your pizza place, and they buy a pizza and they walk out the door. They don't have to pay you for 30 days. Now, the first
Yeah.
month that you're open, you're not having anything coming in because you told all these people that they could wait to pay you. But guess what? You still have to buy the cheese. You have to buy the pepperoni. You have to buy the ovens. You have to pay for the gas. You have to pay for the utilities. You have to pay for the rent, the building. You gotta put all this money out before you get this money in. So that's just some of the examples that come to my head when you say familiarity with the industry and the strategies used therein, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Because man, it makes my life easier. Believe it or not, it makes my life easier. It makes my team life easier because when they're doing bookkeeping transactions with one client, they are seeing the same type of transactions with all the other clients that they're serving as well. And when they see common things that go wrong, we can share those common things with the other clients and say, hey, fix this, change this, do it this way. So that way, so in other words, our response to certain issues or our response to troubleshooting, you're going to probably see it 5 times or 10 times quicker than someone who doesn't have the knowledge because they have to go and read about it or figure it out or ask a colleague, because just like doctors consult with other doctors about hard cases, accountants do the same thing. You know what I mean? We're one of the, 3 specialties of like what you need in your life, right? An accountant, lawyer, and a doctor.
That's it. That's it. And an insurance broker, if you really want to get
an
into it, right?
insurance broker.
But there's a lot to be said about that, though. And while you were rambling off things that either they have to research it or if they have to talk to somebody, about it. Let's talk about the worst case scenario. What if they try something they think will work, but it doesn't? What are the repercussions of that? Right? Because that's where my head went. I'm like, oh, well, what if they file something, I don't know, I can't give an example, like I said, but people out there know what I'm talking about. Like, this isn't an industry where you want to fail forward. This is an industry where you want to get it right every single time.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I guess the main thing that clients say to me is that, man, I love the fact that you already know the tools that I need to set up, and I love the fact that you know how to set it up.
That's cool. That's cool.
And so we get it set up for them and we teach them how to use it efficiently, because these tools, when you're combining different softwares, they're not thinking about all the different nuances of, like, when you do this thing in this other software and it talks to my software, this is what the outcome is gonna be. They're not really thinking about that, but we see the errors or we see the limitations of certain softwares interacting with other softwares. And so we can tell you, hey, don't do it like this, do it like this, so that way we can get the right outcome, and make sure that this transaction is recorded properly. And because the main thing that I hear all the time is, like, some construction guys, they'll have a project management software that has financial capabilities, but it's not integrated with their financial systems. And I say, why? Oh, because we just couldn't get it to work. It was double entering things. It was making things messed up. And we just keep them separate. And that's the whole thing. When you start to keep the field separate from the back office, that causes a delay in how fast information can travel from one place to the other, which is in this case from the field to the office. And therefore it delays the decision-making process that the owner can make.
Yeah. Delays this decision-making process, probably even delays maybe payments in some scenarios, which also will affect cash flow, right?
Yep.
And, I think there's a lot to be said about that. That's some really good advice. So speaking of advice, I'm curious, you've been doing this, what'd you say, 8 years?
8 years. 8 years.
Okay. So you've been doing this 8 years. Have you noticed any common themes, like when you bring on a client, right, and you're talking to them about their growth strategy, and you're sitting there and coming up with different things to implement and different ways to increase profits and stuff like that. Have you noticed any trends in what somebody maybe isn't doing that they could or should be doing that would result in higher profits? Is there one thing that sticks out, or is it just all across the board?
I think if I have to say the one common thing would probably be scheduling.
Oh, really? Talk to me
Yes.
about that.
Yeah, because scheduling to me is more important than estimating. Because if you could execute a schedule, meaning that we say that we want to finish this project in 6 months and we actually finish it in 6 months, now we have the opportunity to start new jobs or new projects on time, and that means that we've kind of managed our labor force pretty well too, and we paid them well, and more than likely we probably broke even, you know what I mean, or we actually made a profit. So, but whenever you go like extend the schedule, the schedule goes from 6 months to 9 months. Almost, I would even go as far as saying 8. I don't have this statistic, but I would go as far as saying 8 out of 10 times you're losing money when that happens.
Wow.
You're losing money because now either you're losing money on that job or you're losing money in opportunity.
Opportunity cost, right?
Yeah, because now you may have a great client who was waiting for you to start their project, but because now you can't start it for 3 months, they may say, you know what, we gotta go with a new contractor. We just can't wait that long, and so you miss the opportunity.
Man, and that stuff that it's a fleeting thought, man, right? Because how do you quantify it? A lot of times you can't. And it's like, oh, you know what? We'll get the next one or whatever. And you don't realize you got $1 million sitting on the table or whatever, whatever it could be. And then it compounds, right? Because, if and this is all the stuff that's just going through my head right now as you're talking, right? But if you go over schedule, right? If on one, that's going to compound if you go over on another and another and another, and then you're just counting lost days throughout the year, man.
Oh man,
that's got to be okay. That's really, really good advice. I appreciate. I did not expect you to say scheduling. So how do you? I mean, if you notice this, right? You come into a business and you say, okay, 4 out of your last 6 jobs, you didn't meet the target date. How do you coach your clients on being able to correct that?
Good. Yeah, so the first thing that we got to start doing, we got to start using the project management system efficiently. We need to make sure that daily logs are going in every day, and entering daily logs need to be tied to performance. Because once you start to do that, now the field guys are going to make sure that, hey, I'm entering my daily logs on time because it's tied to my performance. But now you're going to be able to course correct very quickly because you have updates like every day, you know what I mean, about certain things that are happening on the job. Like for an HVAC, hey, if this Freon that we're waiting on didn't come in, and now that's going to push everything back because we can't get a final, on the job until we load this system up, then that's going to make you as a business owner make some different decisions. Versus if you didn't know that, but because you had five jobs that you were managing at one time, and you kind of just didn't have updated information on each job, so you couldn't prioritize on which job needed more manpower today versus not so much manpower, or which job that, because we don't have the Freon over here, let me go ahead and shift them from that work site to another work site, so we can go ahead and finish that up and kind of get ahead over here and be able to close out some things so we can get paid quicker because we waiting on that pay app. That pay app is tied to this scope of work being completed. So all those things happen, or it can it can shift your mind if you have the information. So my thing is just like, hey, have your guys make sure that they're putting in those daily logs and start to track that. Give yourself a baseline schedule inside the project management system, and then try to see why did the schedule go over 3 days? Well, then you tie that back to your daily logs. What happened in those 3 days? What happened 3 days prior? And then you better see, okay, do I have an employee problem? Do I have a shipment problem? Do I have an approver problem? What is it? Because that data is just going to help you shape your company better. It's just going to put you guys in a better trajectory, because you are so in tune with what's happening. It's like you're not going to be in shape overnight. Like nobody gets in shape overnight.
Yeah.
So
Consistency.
Consistency. You just keep saying, hey, put these daily logs in. Keep working on getting our suppliers to respond on time. Keep making sure we're putting these emails out on time. Keep making sure that we have all the tools that we needed to have before leaving the warehouse today. Because I see that you didn't have the right tools. You had to come back. You had to drive 20 minutes down the road, take another 20 minutes to get back. So that was 40 minutes of time that was wasted because you forgot to grab certain tools from the warehouse.
Wow. Okay. So that's interesting. I'm starting to kind of put the pieces together, Tim, of what you're saying, because no, that's really great. And it starts with the daily logs, right? So you can gain visibility into what's actually happening. And then all the things that you just rambled off, I'm considering in my head like leading metrics, right there. What activities are being done that are leading to the results that you want or don't want, right?
Yeah.
I mean, and so when you start to dissect that, then it becomes, I would assume at that point, an ownership or leadership execution, right, of set expectations, drive accountability, right?
Yes.
So if you break it down piece by piece, it's like, okay, so here's it, and it all ties back to this scheduling, man. This is incredible. That's awesome. I never really took the time to unpack that in the way that you just did. So that's really incredible. Okay, so I'm going to shift gears just a little bit. Not really.
Okay.
I'm still on topic, but one thing I want to talk about, and I don't talk about this enough on the show, maybe because I don't have enough people on the show that know about finances. But okay, so as business owners, all right, business owners out there, they're mainly who listens to this show. They know what revenue is; it's what you make. They know what profit is; it's what you keep, right? But what is cash flow, and why is it so important?
Yeah, cash flow is speed.
Yes,
it's the speed of cash moving from the client's account to my account.
Yeah.
How fast does that transaction happen? So when we think about cash flow, there's a lot of things we got to think about. When we're mapping out the payment schedule, we got to think about cash flow when we're mapping that out, because we're saying that, okay, if I need windows and doors before I can get this next payout, then when do I need to order windows and doors? Because those things are back ordered for 3 to 6 months. So if that's the case, maybe I need to collect something up front to order windows and doors and then delay the start date so we can continue to work on other projects, things like that can help get us cash flow quicker. And then once the windows and doors come in, now we can start this project, because when we get to the window and doors section, nothing's gonna bottleneck. Nothing's gonna stop us from getting that next payout. So it's very strategic when you think about cash flow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And I asked because I think that's one of the more confusing pieces of the financial picture that, I don't know how many people out there listening have looked at a cash flow chart, right? Or a cash flow projection, but they're not easy to understand. I mean, even if you look at it and even if somebody explains it to you, it's not super easy to understand. I like the way that you just framed it, right? It's speed, right? And as you started talking, I'm thinking in my head, okay, it's speed in relation to how quickly you can get paid and how, I don't want to say slowly you can pay, but it's the balance between, right?
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah.
so that's kind of those are the levers. You got to figure out what levers pull both of those, in those directions. Am I kind of on point there?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. And that's why you see a lot of contractors having their agreements now, which a lot of the subs hate, pay when I get paid.
Pay when paid. Yeah, I've been seeing that more and more, actually.
Yeah, because it's hard to manage cash flow if I'm spitting all these things out, and just like you mentioned earlier, but I gotta wait 45 days or 60 days to get paid.
Yeah.
It's just hard to keep a business running efficiently.
Yeah.
With those things popping up.
So I imagine, you had mentioned at the beginning of the show, or not maybe at the beginning, but a little bit ago, that like commercial clients, they play on volume, right? So a lot of times they have lower margins, right? So somewhere around 5% profit. I imagine when you're at that 5% profit, and please feel free to correct me if I'm wrong in any of this, because I'm going to ask you to expand in a second. But I imagine if you've got thin margins, as thin as 5%, even if that 5% is a large dollar amount because of the volume that you're doing, that cash flow becomes even more important and even, dare I say, dangerous, right? I could imagine you could be a profitable company, but still get yourself into some serious financial trouble from a cash flow standpoint. Is that an accurate assumption?
Yeah, you can cash flow can become a problem when payroll becomes a problem. Payroll is probably the main thing that eats up cash flow.
Yeah, I can.
And so
I can corroborate that, man.
So the first thing I look at when I see a big company or a small company, I want to see what percentage of revenue is being applied to payroll. And if I see that number over 30%, I know that cash flow is probably a problem.
Okay, so when you say, I want to stop you real quick. I'm sorry, because I'm super interested in what you're saying, because I do my P&Ls and I do it all percentage of revenue.
Yeah.
I've got all that. So when you say that, are you talking about, because there's different ways to classify, especially in the service business where labor is your product, essentially, right? So you could break out your technician's labor in COGS, right? Cost of goods sold for those who are listening. So when you say 30%, are you talking about just the COGS labor? Or are you talking about collective, both COGS and G&A expense labor?
Yeah, I'm talking about it all combined.
Wow. Okay. So that should be under 30% ideally.
Yep, ideally it should be under 30%.
Good advice.
Because if it's over, definitely it's almost like there's a cash flow problem, and a cash flow problem to me is paycheck to paycheck, job to job.
Yeah,
that's a cash flow problem. So another thing that we want to look at is a ratio called current ratio, and with this ratio, I want to see, when it comes to your current assets, meaning your bank accounts, things you can get your hands on very quickly as far as cash, how many times can you pay off your current liabilities? And ideally, I want to see that current ratio at 6, but I have never yet to find a client who had it at 6.
Wow. And that's 6 to 1, right? You 6 to 1
6 to 1.
Wow.
Yeah, 6 to 1. So I can pay my current liabilities 6 times before all my cash is gone.
What do you typically find when you come in, like you new client and kind of just getting started? What do you typically see that ratio at?
Typically, I can see it at 1 or less.
Wow.
But I will say the best client I came across had it at 4. 4, yeah. around like 4. And it all depends on when you pull that report too. Like if I'm doing it based on just last year's position, or last month position, or last quarter position, so it's going to give me different ratios.
Yeah. Wow, that's thank you for bringing that up. I didn't even ask about that one. That's that's good. So between the percentage of revenue of the labor under 30% and the current asset ratio 6-to-1, are those typically so it sounds like those are targets that you may set for some of your clients. Are there any other targets that are kind of high level that my audience could kind of take away, or are those the two main ones?
Those are two main ones.
Okay.
Like once you start to get there, you're running a very efficient operation. I mean, you can pay 6 times, and plus you're being profitable. That means that we're going to get to a place where retained earnings is going way up. Oh, I guess that would be the thing. So I want to see the trend of retained earnings increasing every year. So that lets me know that you had enough in the bank at the end of the year to carry over to the next year. And it just shows that you're being profitable, and a lot of times that we're retaining the earnings.
Got it. I appreciate that. That's good advice too. I want to circle back real quick to the percentage of revenue for the labor, just to get a little bit more granular understanding. When you calculate that percentage, what do you include? Is it just wages? Is it wages taxes? Is it wages taxes insurance? What does that all entail? That you compare against.
Just wages.
Just wages.
I just want to see just wages, gross wages.
Just gross wages, and that's the most accurate. That's the most accurate way to do it, right? Because then you kind of take the other stuff out of the equation.
Remember, all of this stuff is just an estimation.
Sure.
But wages is going to be the bulk of what makes up that percentage. Yeah. You can go get very granular and calculate a labor burden rate, and then backtrack it, and then kind of get the true cost of that employee, and then do the but it's going to be so minimum,
it
minimal,
really is. I can attest to that, because I've done that. I have a tech burden rate that I applied it, and I brought it all the way down to the hourly level. Yeah. And you break it out, and you're right, it's not that much different than gross wages. And so that's why I asked. So if you did include the taxes and the insurance and the benefits, even, because that's all kind of part of payroll, depending on how you look at it, that number of 30% could be a little bit higher, could be 40, could be 35, but that's why you use 30, because you have a very singular number to look at, and it's a very clear target.
Yeah,
cool.
Absolutely.
All right, I appreciate you clearing that up. That's really good. I'm, right after this call, I'm gonna go look in my P&L. I'm like, oh crap, I'm in trouble. No. But that's really cool. Okay, we're already, if you can believe it, we're already rounding the corner on the hour. I could have this conversation I could go Joe Rogan on this, right, and just talk for 3 hours, But I'm afraid I might lose my audience. I'm not Joe Rogan. So I want to ask, number one, before we wrap up, just got a couple more questions. Is there anything that I haven't asked that you feel is important enough to bring up or to point out?
I think what we did, I wouldn't say is new, but I think a lot of construction guys, and trust me, I have like an affinity to them, my heart is with construction. They don't spend enough time really working on the vision for the company. Like you have to have that laid out, because that steers everything. Like that is the reason why we buy 5 more trucks. That's the reason why we hire an estimator or a sales team. And these are the reason why we're going after these type of contracts, because they're going to yield and these type of margins and put us in this position so we can do more things like this. They need to spend time thinking about the vision of the company, so they just not all over the place and just taking anything that comes their way. They have a standard. It's like, no, if I take that job, it's not going to help me get over here which is where we are planning to go. So I need to disregard that and look at the next client up.
I completely understand. So, and with the clearer the vision, the better you can help them execute on it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
100%.
Makes sense. All right. So my last question is usually if you could give one piece of advice to business owners out there, what would that be? Was that the advice?
I would say, yeah, but I can give you another one.
Let's do that. Let's as much advice as you can give, man. I will take.
Yeah. People always. This is the big one. Well, how do I know if my pricing is right? And I always tell people, you can't compare your price to the industry or someone else doing the same type of work you're doing, because you guys have two different visions about your company. And so if I have a vision of being a $50 million construction company, I have to price differently to become that, versus I just want to have a $250,000 company or $1 million company, and that's it. I just want to be comfortable, have enough work to feed 3 people, and I'm good. My price is going to look different. I can accept different types of jobs because I'm not trying to be a $50 million construction company. And so when we think about price, we have to have vision in mind, because that's going to dictate the price. And I know it sounds so philosophical, it sounds so off and different, but it's the truth, because that is how you price. If you want to drive a Mercedes Benz every day to work, your price is not going to be the same the guy who's okay with a Ford Focus. It's just not.
Yeah.
But then you got to make sure your product and your service matches the price, and that's really all that matters. Your product and service matches the price. That's it.
Product service, man. That's good advice, Tim. I do appreciate that. I'm glad I asked the second time. That is
Yeah.
cool. No, thank you so much, man. That's incredible, and I think that's going to be a great takeaway for my listeners as well. So, all right, on the heels of that, man, where can people find you if they want to learn more, if they have more questions for you? How can they get a hold of you?
Yeah, I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on Instagram. I respond mostly to my LinkedIn messages. So if you send me a message on LinkedIn, you definitely can get me there. If you just want to meet with me and book an appointment with me and say, hey, Tim, you know what? I want to see what it looks like to work with you. Go to a construction.accountant. Construction.accountant.
Get out of here. That's awesome. Construction.accountant. Not going to forget that one.
Nope.
That's cool. All right. That's awesome. Tim, man, thank you so much for coming on the show and spending your valuable time with me and our audience. A ton of great takeaways here, and I really appreciate it, my man.
Yeah, man. Thank you, Josh, for having me. It's always a blessing to be on a show like this, so thank you.
All right, right on. Until next time, my friend.
Thanks for listening to the Blue is the New White podcast. Be sure to subscribe to get the latest episodes. For more, please follow at Josh Zolan on LinkedIn, Twitter, and Instagram. Or visit us at blueisthenewwhite.com, where we create success, not debt, and build blue-collar heroes.